Hi. Yari. It's me, Yari-chan. VTuber with one brain cell, doing its best. Happy Hump Day! Did everyone get humped today? I hope everyone got humped today. Hi, Flores. Hi, Rem. My character should be a goth mommy? You're right. You're probably right. The goth mommy route is strong. Very strong. Wait, I can have a goth mommy outfit. As long as I get to keep the bow. The bow is my defining characteristic. Thank you. I think we might work on the hair, the bangs, and the back should also be colored. We could do that. That would be sick. That would be a sick toggle. You know what, Flores? Sometimes you come up with good ideas. I might even forgive you for the whole super cow thing. Where is the hair? Ah, here it is. I found the hair. Do I just want to share my screen? Oh no! Oh no! Oh shit! It's 3 a.m. and you're tired as fuck? Some energy drink. Get you some Red Bull. How should I do this? Does it work if I share this? Ah, I think it does. Drinking water with sugar in it? Yeah, that's basically what it is. Oh no! Oh, it's just a first. Oh, congratulations on the first, Flores! Yatta! Oh, I forgot to start the YouTube stream. Oh, fuck. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. I have a YouTube channel. I was multi-streaming on YouTube. All right, which one of these is my hair? I think it's this one. It looks like it's this one right here. Yeah, that looks like it. How do I make layers? I'm kind of an idiot. Oh, there's too many buttons here. I'll name this one background. F for fill, not fuck it. F for fill. Wait, it didn't. Oh, yeah, there it is. Where's the color? Oh, fuck your family too! What? Floris, where's your ad blocker? Install an ad blocker. I think this is your problem, Floris. Everyone cool uses ad blockers. I think this isn't dark enough. It looks too much like cotton candy. Did I tell you that I have a problem with bots on everyone's stream? Oh yeah? What's the problem with the bot? Yeah, I think it should be brighter. This is the actual color right here. I can say anything on their stream and it just deletes it for being inappropriate. Oh, what did you type? I didn't see anything. Oh, it might not show it to me here. Did it delete a message? Oh, I thought it deleted one of your messages. I don't see any deleted messages. Oh, I thought you were complaining about my file. I don't think it's blocking anything. So say a slur, Floris. Floris, I need you to test this for me. Say a slur. It's a test. P is for pipette. P is for pipette. See, hair color. Hair color. You can say that all you want. I've had way worse than that. Okay, how do I paint? What was the test? To see if it would block you from saying slurs. B? B for brush? Oh, look at that. I got it. I don't think that's right. It's too dark. Oh, it's the wrong layer. That's not this layer. This is the darker layer. But no, I wanted it that dark. Never mind. Never mind. I wanted it that dark. I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing. You want to watch a video? Oh, shit. How would it look? What is hair supposed to look like? You want to watch a video? Okay. What does hair look like? Who has bangs that are like a different color at the end? I'll have to find an example and copy it. Johnny Sins? All right. Are you sure Johnny Sins has hair? The most toxic town in America. He probably does have ball hair. That's a very good point. All right, shut up. Oh, bro, chill out, bro. What? Mongolian throat singing? I can't do that. That's not a song. All right, hold on. That's what it's like, isn't it? Ugh, I thought I did a pretty good imitation. This is not a song! It does sound exactly like what I just did, isn't it? Hold on. Here it comes. See, I told you! That's as loud as it goes. I can't turn it any louder. Ugh. Fucking helpless. Is that better? I did. I hydrated. I heard it. Ow! Awesome. Great. That was great. Oh, that's way too loud. Ow, ow, my ears. Oh, God. Oh, God. I'm sorry. Oh, God. Oh, 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 oh. Okay, back to a normal ass volume. You can hear it. I see it on my volume meter right here. I see it. You can hear it. It's in the yellow, you asshole. I've seen this. I've seen this one already. Sorry, guys. I've seen this one. I think I've seen the Toxic Town too. I think I've seen this one. Yeah, I've seen this one before. Rem, help me out here. Can you hear the video? You can't hear it? Oh, fuck!
How it got to this point, who's ultimately responsible, and what the future holds for this region, we'll need to go back nearly 200 years to a time before this town even existed, or for that matter, before Oklahoma was even a state.
I thought you were lying this whole time. I thought you were lying. That means nobody heard my cool music too. Wow. Wow, I feel like an asshole, Flores. I'm so sorry. Okay, it should be working. Please tell me it's working. It's working now. Yes! There's a crazy stream delay? Weird. I like it. It's pretty good. Pretty good. What the? How do I do this? I don't want to erase anymore. Oh, wait. Oh, okay, I see. No, I don't like this at all. This doesn't work. Is that the same guy? It's him! That's the guy! That's the guy! He's sung Mongolian throat singing! It's him! Oh! Yeah, I think that's, why is that? That's stream elements then. Hold on, let me see. I can send a message and see how long it takes to show up. Test. Oh, I don't know. It showed up right away. Weird. Hold on, let me actually view the stream. Okay, I'll see how long it takes for it to show up. Hi. I'll say hi. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 4 seconds. That's pretty normal. Yeah. Somebody with music? Do you enjoy Mongolian throat singing? Hi, Zeldas! I don't know how to do art. I have no idea what I'm doing. It is kind of cool TBH. Alright, what else do we need? Oh, we need the side things. You'll be doing art soon? Nice. My plan is to just do enough so that a real artist will be able to use it as a reference to make some good art. That is my goal. I think this is the right bang right here. Yeah. I don't even know how to use this program. Like, I'm just winging it. Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. We gotta change the other bangs, or the other parts of my hair. I don't know what parts of hair are called. Yeah, sorry, June. But I mean, thanks for letting me know anyway. It could have been me, and I wouldn't have known. Just like, you know, the complete silence. I mean, Flores did tell me that it was completely silent, but I didn't believe him. Sorry, Flores. Well, here's the other hair here. Okay. I want to fill. That did not work at all. I don't know what just happened there. What is that? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? What is that? Oh, it's the wrong layer. Oh, okay, this is the right color. There we go. Just gotta increase the opacity. Okay, save as, texture 1. What? Default? No. PNG, texture 1. Replace. Okay. Oh, you can't see the dialogue windows. Oh, that's good. That's actually a bonus. That's a bonus. Watch out, don't look. Oh God, I'm naked! That didn't work at all. Actually, it kind of did. keep falling asleep. I need more coffee. That wasn't the right bag. Oh, thank you. Oh, you know what? It's this one right here to the left. Alright, hold on, maybe we can do select. How do I select stuff? Okay, I want to watch the Toxic Town now. I want to watch the Toxic Town. That's enough of the throat singing.
In 1830, then U.S. President Andrew Jackson signed into law the Indian Removal Act. Under the act, the United States government forcibly relocated Native Americans from their ancestral lands to U.S.-designated Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River in a brutal migration known as the Trail of Tears. One of those forcibly displaced tribes was the Quapaw tribe, forced westward from Arkansas in 1834 to a reservation in what's now the northeast corner of the state of Oklahoma. While the Quapaws once numbered in the tens of thousands, the journey westward was brutal and unforgiving, with many dying of disease, exposure, and starvation. By the time they reached their designated corner, there were only a few families left. Those that made it settled into the region, and this land was designated as the Quapaw Nation Reservation. But the Quapaws' hardships were far from over. Only a few decades later, they would face a whole new series of challenges, which would severely undermine their already shaky sovereignty and literally undermine their land. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, lead and zinc ore was discovered on Quapaw Nation land, and multiple mining operations began sprouting up on land leased by some of the Quapaw landowners. But in late 1913, major lead and zinc ore deposits were discovered very close to where I'm standing right now. Multiple mining companies attempted to move on it, but ran into a massive snag. In order to access and mine the vast amount of lead and zinc under this ground, they needed to convince multiple individual Quapaw landowners to lease their land to them in return for royalty payments. But a lot of the Quapaw landowners refused to lease. Without leasing agreements in place, mining companies couldn't legally access the majority of these deposits. So the companies decided to take a different and much more insidious approach.
They killed
to get around
them.
the resistance from landowners, mining companies, primarily the Eagle Pitcher Lead Company, teamed up with the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs. They lobbied the Bureau to pursue the only technically legal route available to lease the land from the Quapaw owners without the owner's permission. The Bureau of Indian Affairs successfully pressured Congress into declaring 62 individual Quapaw landowners legally incompetent and unable to care for their own property or business affairs. This was a devastating and dehumanizing blow to the Quapaw Nation and indisputably an absolute moral failure of the United States government. With the Bureau of Indian Affairs now in control over decisions of whether or not to lease the land, to whom, and what percentage in royalties the Quapaw landowners would receive, the mining companies, with the U.S. government in their pocket, had effectively stolen this land and its resources away from the Quapaw they had forced there in the first place. As mining operations ramped up rapidly, this region became the largest single source of lead and zinc in the United States. Nearly 50% of the lead and zinc used by the U.S. in World War I came not just from the region overall, but from Pitcher Field itself. The lead was used to produce bullets and bomb shells, and the zinc helped prevent rusting on tanks and various steel equipment. By 1926, it had become the world's largest single source. Over the region's mining lifetime, a total of around 1.7 million tons of lead and nearly 8.9 million tons of zinc were produced. Keep in mind, those are not the figures for the raw ore. Those are the figures for the amount of actual lead and zinc concentrate. But with the vast amount of raw ore being pulled out of the ground came the need to significantly increase their processing capacity. So numerous mills were built alongside the mines. By 1927, 248 mills were in operation to process the over 180 million tons of crude ore. To process this massive volume of raw ore, it was first crushed into much smaller pieces. In some cases, they would use dry gravity separation. This is mostly where the pebble-sized chunks come from, creating a gravel-like consistency. Alternatively, they would use what's called a froth flotation pond, where the ground ore would be mixed with toxic chemicals, including cyanide, and frothed, with the lead and zinc floating to the top to separate out. Once they'd extracted the metals from the raw ore, they'd discard the leftover waste into ever-growing piles near the mills.
Disgusting!
The chat pile you see behind me is just one of nearly 300 that accumulated around Pitcher, some once towering over 200 feet tall. When you pull up a satellite view of the region, it's almost impossible to miss, appearing like somebody fired a giant shotgun from the sky over the northeast corner of Oklahoma. And similar to buckshot, this thing is loaded with toxic metals, specifically lead, zinc, and cadmium.
Oops,
but while we now better understand the impact these chat piles and the mines they came from would have on Pitcher and nearby communities, not as much attention was paid to their effects on people at the time. And tragically, that lack of alarm and urgency would spell disaster for the area's residents.
No!
To support the immense success of mining operations, towns sprang up almost immediately in the surrounding area, and in the center of it all was Pitcher. The town was named in honor of O.S. Pitcher, the founder of the Pitcher Lead Company, which had merged with the Eagle White Lead Company in 1916, forming Eagle Pitcher Lead. At its beginnings, Pitcher was a lawless place, full of corruption and violence, not unlike many of the other mining boom towns that sprung up during the mid-19th to early 20th centuries. But despite its rowdy start, Pitcher grew rapidly in population and commerce and was incorporated in 1918. But because it was situated in Quapaw Nation, the land could not be taxed, so civic organizations were formed to raise money and create Pitcher's backbone, building schools, paving roads, and setting up utilities. At its peak in 1926, Pitcher was home to over 14,000 residents, with another 14,000 miners working the field, some commuting by trolley from places as far as Carthage, Missouri. Today, it's hard to imagine that this was ever a bustling town. In fact, I'm currently walking in what used to be downtown Pitcher, but as you can see around me, there's not a single building left standing. There are few indications that this was ever anything more than rural land, apart from a few overgrown concrete foundations and a couple crumbling columns. But as with all mining towns, the growth and prosperity brought on by digging up the Earth's natural resources for profit can only last as long as there is still something to dig up, and what you can dig up is still profitable.
And then they left.
As demand for lead and zinc declined through the 1930s, mining operations began to wind down. But the United States' entry into the Second World War generated renewed significant government-subsidized production. Its lead and zinc output was once again so substantial that Pitcher Field was referred to by some as the mines that won World War II. But the bloodshed that drove its second wind of prosperity could only go on so long. The end of the Second World War brought a sudden and drastic decrease in demand for lead and zinc. Mining activity and output continued to decline through the years, and by 1967, all mining operations had ceased. But the mine shafts remained, as did 70 million tons of chat and 36 million tons of mill sand and sludge. Throughout the entire active mining period, companies had been continuously pumping out groundwater from these mines. They knew, even back then, that if they didn't keep them dry, the mines would flood, resulting in the groundwater being contaminated with toxic metals and sulfuric acid. With this in mind, Eagle Pitcher Lead had offered to backfill the over 1,400 mine shafts with the chat, but the U.S. Department of the Interior, then in charge of the lease agreements, told them not to bother, claiming that, quote, the land's value for farming purposes has already been greatly impaired, if not destroyed. The U.S. government, recognizing the horrible condition the land was left in, knew that the groundwater would become contaminated over time as the mines inevitably flooded. Yet, they remained wholly unconcerned by it, and much of the land was returned to the Quapaws with the expiration of the mining leases. Little corrective action was taken, mining companies moved out, chat piles were left towering, and the mines were left to flood.
They didn't care.
The way in which mining waste contaminates its environment is particularly pernicious, and the spread is extremely difficult to contain, especially if you're starting decades after abandonment. At its core, there are two primary forms of contamination: toxic metals from the chat piles and mines, and sulfuric acid. The chat that's gravel-like in consistency isn't necessarily all that dangerous on its own in small amounts. While the chunks are larger, lead concentration is significantly lower, and the weight makes it less likely to blow around and cross-contaminate. But on the bottom of these piles are bases of much finer mill sand and silt. These finer grains contain around 1,000 times the concentration of toxic metals, most notably lead, compared to the larger chunks. And with their smaller size, they have a higher bioavailability, and the particles can be more easily swept away by wind, continuously contaminating nearby areas. But the spread of contamination from the chat piles doesn't only occur when the chat gets blown around by the wind. It also happens when it gets wet. With any amount of rain, water that hits, gets absorbed, and runs off chat piles carries with it toxic metals. The runoff collects into small streams, and in the case of the Tar Creek Superfund site, finds its way to Tar Creek, increasing the lead, zinc, and cadmium concentration of the water with every rainstorm. But there's another type of contamination hitting Tar Creek, one that's much more immediately obvious if you know where to look. When an open mine containing sulfur-bearing metals such as lead and zinc gets exposed to oxygen and then flooded, sulfuric acid dissolves into the water from the walls of the mines. That water then floods up to the surface or flows through the aquifers underground and enters the creek. This is referred to as acid mine drainage. Sulfuric acid is a highly toxic, highly acidic mineral acid. Human exposure results in burns on any part of the body that comes in contact with it, and ingestion of a concentrated dose can be lethal, burning a hole straight through the stomach. When a large amount of sulfuric acid is introduced to bodies of water, it coats the shore and sediment in what looks like rust, giving it a bright orange or red color. Here is a clear and modern example of this in action. The larger body of water you see here is Tar Creek, flowing south. A stream containing sulfuric acid is emptying into Tar Creek from the east. This stream is referred to as Old Lytle Creek, and it's flowing straight from a flooded sinkhole. Also seen here is a small roadside stream flowing from the west side that appears to be runoff from a nearby chat pile and base due to rain from the day before. On the other side of the bridge, you can see the mixture of the two creeks, a muddy reddish water that will continue winding its way south through Tar Creek to the Neosho River and ultimately end up in Grand Lake.
I'm not sleeping. I don't know why I'm sleeping.
When this region first popped up on the EPA's radar in the late 1970s, it was primarily over concerns regarding water quality and contamination. It was already well known that if water was not continuously pumped out of the mine shafts, they would eventually flood and contaminate the groundwater. And that's exactly what happened. In 1983, the Environmental Protection Agency declared the region a Superfund site, a designation the EPA gives to locations contaminated with hazardous material that pose a threat to human health and the environment. It was named the Tar Creek Superfund after Tar Creek, the main body of water running the length of it. The next year, in 1984, the EPA teamed up with the Oklahoma State Department of Health and began sealing off contaminated wells and diverting contaminated water away from Tar Creek while monitoring groundwater quality. In fact, one of these original diversions was Lytle Creek. In the early 1980s, Lytle Creek flowed through a flooded sinkhole on its way to Tar Creek. they diverted the water west to meet Tar Creek further north so it would avoid picking up sulfuric acid along the way. But contaminated water from that flooded sinkhole is still flowing into Tar Creek at Lytle Creek's original meeting point, over 37 years after its diversion, albeit at a reduced flow rate. The EPA considered the well sealings and water diversions finished by 1986 and continued to monitor until 1991. But despite the massive amount of mining waste remaining and the fact that water was continuing to get contaminated by flooded mines and an ever-growing number of sinkholes opening up, they stopped here, turning a blind eye to the dangers the site still posed to its residents.
Nope, they're like, no, it's good.
As the years went by, parents and teachers began to take notice of an alarming trend. Towns in and around the mining waste, like Pitcher, Cardin, Commerce, Quapaw, and here in Miami, were finding a much higher rate of learning disabilities and behavioral problems in children when compared to other places in Oklahoma, even those with similar or lower socioeconomic statuses. Ever since the piles of mining waste started accumulating, some residents in the area had been using chat from these piles to pave driveways, lay foundations for houses, and even fill their kids' sandboxes. It was also very common for families to spend an afternoon at the beach being a chat and mill sand shore lining a flooded sinkhole. But hidden in the sand were toxic levels of lead, zinc, and cadmium. And the water not only contained the same, but was also contaminated with sulfuric acid. What were thought to be just sunburns from a day at the beach were at least partially chemical burns. People were literally swimming in acid.
Ugh. Swimming in acid.
For a few thousand years, humans have well understood that exposure to lead can be toxic. But it wasn't until much more recently in the 1970s that we discovered just how little lead it takes to become a big problem for children. In 1950, a pediatrician named Herbert Needleman began documenting the effects of lower-level lead toxicity in children, and unsurprisingly, had been met with significant resistance from the lead and mining industries. But in March 1979, Needleman published a study in the New England Journal of Medicine that linked the concentration of lead in children's teeth to teacher-reported learning and behavioral problems, like distractibility, organizational ability, ability to follow sequences, and overall functioning. Needleman's work was incredibly influential, and it was published amidst an ongoing discussion around what blood lead concentration was considered safe in children. Prior to the study's publishing, any blood lead concentration above 40 micrograms per deciliter was considered toxic, and even that was a drop from a previous limit of 60 micrograms. Then, in 1971, they dropped that to 30 micrograms, then 25 micrograms in 1978, then 10 in 1991, and today, it's only 5. While lead exposure can present problems in any human with an elevated blood lead level, kids 6 and under are particularly more vulnerable to lead-related damage than adults. Where adults absorb roughly 20 to 60% of lead ingested, children absorb 50 to 100%, with the absorption rate dependent on stomach contents. And that lead is stored in teeth and bones, like calcium, and can be drawn out from the bones and back into the bloodstream when calcium is lacking, resulting in compounding organ and neurological damage. But alongside these studies and discussions around safe blood lead concentration levels over the years grew an ever-increasingly horrifying realization. If lead was more toxic than we previously thought, particularly in children, then that means for decades they had been, and continued to be, silently poisoned. In 1994, the Indian Health Service tested the blood lead levels of children living within the Superfund site. They found that an alarming 35% of children ages 0 to 6 had levels exceeding the then 10 microgram per deciliter federal limit. The Ottawa County Health Department conducted their own tests as well and found 43% of children were above the limit. By today's 5 microgram standard, that percentage would have been significantly higher. They urgently reported these findings to the EPA. In August that same year, the EPA began testing for toxic metals in soil in places where children tend to come together and play, like daycares, playgrounds, and parks. And the results were explosive, revealing significant levels of lead, zinc, and cadmium contamination spread across the region. So in 1996, the EPA began to dig up and remove dirt on any lots that tested hot for lead, replacing it with clean soil. From 1996 to 2014, the EPA spent over $200 million replacing contaminated soil on over 2,900 lots, with an average spend of about $70,000 per lot. While yard remediation efforts were underway, the EPA also created a community relations plan. They held meetings to educate the residents of the area and encouraged campaigns to spread awareness of the toxicity of the mining waste. Signs and flyers, many created by children, were scattered through towns, discouraging the relocation and use of chat and warning of the dangers of lead. But over time, it became increasingly clear that the EPA's actions were not only severely delayed, but wholly inadequate to address the level of danger plaguing the towns surrounding the mining waste, especially Pitcher. And a growing group of concerned citizens would make sure those in power weren't about to mark the job complete. Ever since the EPA found lead contamination in and around the Tar Creek Superfund site, some Pitcher residents began attempting to lobby the government to buy them out. Their town, their water, their yards, their own homes were poisoning themselves and their children. And not only was there nobody lining up to buy property next to or inside a Superfund site, much of the land the homes were built on still belonged to the Quapaws. Banks weren't about to loan money to purchase a home built on contaminated land the homeowner didn't even own. But there was also significant resistance to buyouts at multiple levels. Many older Pitcher residents, some of whom had lived there most or all of their lives, were staunch opponents of any buyout options. Some even refused to accept the scientific findings regarding lead contamination, claiming the source of lead in the soil was from the paint of demolished houses rather than resulting from the waste of 1.7 million tons of lead being pulled out of the ground. And then there was the resistance at the political level. Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe served as chairman for the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works from 2003 to 2007, then again from 2015 to 2017. Inhofe's first term as chairman coincided with the buyout discussions, and since the Environment and Public Works Committee oversees the EPA, many in favor of buyout plans thought Inhofe would recognize the dangers posed to the community and recommend buyout options. Unfortunately for them, the opposite proved true. It turns out James Inhofe and his brother Perry Inhofe were owners of the Mid-Continent Casualty Company, an insurance firm which specialized in insuring clients with, quote, difficult or unique exposures. Mid-Continent Casualty was sold in the 1980s and is now part of the financial behemoth American Financial Group, but their specialty remains the same. They exist to insure clients whose industries put other people and property at risk. And this presents a significant conflict of interest on Inhofe's part, not only as a sitting senator, but as a chairman overseeing the EPA. Inhofe pushing for the EPA to approve federal buyouts would have, in effect, been an admission that the land was toxic enough to be considered uninhabitable. And if it were deemed uninhabitable, that would open a door of liability for the people and corporations that made it that way. That would hit too close to home, given Inhofe's ties to those responsible parties. To muddy it up even more, some of Inhofe's top donors included those in the oil, gas, and, of course, mining industries. Pushing for buyouts would equal fewer campaign contributions, but shooting buyout talks down would secure future contributions, along with the potential for kickbacks. For a man whose business it was to protect polluters' pocketbooks and openly preached man-made climate change to be a hoax, it hardly comes as any surprise who he sided with.
The claim that global warming is caused by man-made emissions is simply untrue and not based on sound science. Wake up, America, with all the hysteria, all the fear, all the phony science. Could it be that man-made global warming
Wake up, America!
is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people?
Wake up!
I believe it is.
Rather than pushing for buyouts, Inhofe instead spent 3 years drafting a plan he claimed would clean up Tar Creek's chat problem, but he allocated only $45 million to the project. When this plan was announced, People immediately calculated what a cleanup of this scale would realistically cost and how long it would take. It would not take $45 million. It would take over $225 million. And it would take 50 trucks a day, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 40 years. Inhofe's proposal was not only grossly inadequate to address the toxicity of the site and preserve the safety of residents, it was physically impossible. And all at once, it became abundantly clear that Pitcher's political hopes were dashed. The man who had the most political power and the most potential to help was refusing to do so, choosing instead to protect the financial interests of himself and his donors rather than secure the safety of his constituents. In June 2004, in response to Inhofe's refusal to consider buyout negotiations, coupled with an ever-increasing number of cave-ins, the governor of Oklahoma, Brad Henry, stepped in. In direct and defiant opposition to Senator Inhofe, Henry signed legislation that enabled the state of Oklahoma to offer buyouts. But the state simply couldn't afford to buy everybody out, so they provided voluntary buyout offers to families with children 6 years and under living in the towns of Pitcher and Cardin. By the end of 2005, 55 families had been relocated, costing the state only $3 million. But while these select few families were able to move to relative safety, the level of danger posed to those they left behind was growing. For decades, sinkholes had been opening up as a result of mines collapsing. And the rate of these cave-ins was increasing over time, some swallowing up entire buildings, including people's homes. So around the time the voluntary buyout program kicked off in 2004, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers began to evaluate the subsidence risk of towns within the Tar Creek Superfund site in an attempt to quantify the level of danger posed by these cave-ins. And about 2 years later, in January 2006, the Army Corps of Engineers released their report. They determined 286 locations within the site had an elevated subsidence risk due to the abandoned mines below them. In Pitcher alone, there are 139 houses, 11 businesses, 13 public use facilities, including churches, utility buildings, and parks, and 78 roads at risk of collapse. 86% of Pitcher's buildings, most of them still in use, could collapse without a moment's notice. The slowly creeping nature of toxic metal poisoning was now usurped by a much more imminent and visible threat. The threat of being swallowed whole. Homes and businesses falling through the ground is a highly visible problem, and constituents ending up on the wrong side of a sinkhole was just the right amount of political push needed to convince Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe to finally commit to assisting Tar Creek's remaining residents. On May 4, 2006, Senator Inhofe, U.S. House Representative Dan Boren, and Governor Brad Henry released a press statement announcing a federal buyout program to voluntarily relocate those still living and running businesses within Pitcher and the nearby town of Cardin. By that point, Pitcher's population had dwindled down to a little over 1,000 residents, among them some of the most determined holdouts. And speaking with the press, Inhofe gladly accepted credit for the buyout program, stating, quote, "Buying out these residents and removing them from Tar Creek will eliminate a very serious risk to these Oklahoma families. And, quote, today we have made residents of an important Oklahoma community much safer." This statement came after years of Inhofe denying the importance of that specific Oklahoma community and insisting no buyout relief would ever be provided for residents.
Oh God, what a scumbag.
With the announcement of a federal buyout program came a final realization for the people that had remained.
What a
the town
scumbag.
of Pitcher, as it stood on May 4th, 2006, was only ever going to continue falling apart. There would be no progress, no hope for the future. There would be no new homes, no businesses moving in, no investments, no money, and eventually, no people. With what little was left of Pitcher's population leaving for safer land, these schools would soon shut down. Services and utilities would become restricted. Most businesses would close or move to surrounding areas, and the town would eventually be disincorporated, leaving them abandoned and alone on poisoned, undermined land that was primed to fall out from underneath them at any time. But a little over 2 years later, the buyouts would be interrupted by yet another disaster. However, rather than building up over decades, this one was to be swift, massively destructive, and completely unavoidable.
hurricane. What the fuck? Tornado? Tornado.
At 5:40 p.m. on May 10th, 2008, an EF4 tornado struck Pitcher.
Oh my god.
6 people were killed, over 150 injured, and nearly 200 of the homes remaining were destroyed. Debris blocked roads for days. Emergency crews scrambled to transport the injured to the nearest hospital in Miami, and Governor Brad Henry called in the National Guard to assist with rescue and recovery. The federal government, rather than providing aid to rebuild as they often do in natural disasters of this scale, opted to continue with the buyout process. And they would encounter a lot less resistance now, given that, tragically, many of the holdouts no longer had homes left to sell.
Oh, that's sick. That is
the 2008 tornado
sick.
was the final death blow to a dying town.
Disgusting.
On September 1st, 2009, the state of Oklahoma officially disincorporated Pitcher. The voluntary buyouts were completed by the end of June that year. Pitcher Carton High School had graduated its final class that same month, and the post office had delivered its final batch of mail by July. While there were still about 6 homes and 1 business that refused to leave at any price, Pitcher, after decades of lead-related health problems, sinkholes, and political embattlements, had officially ceased to exist.
This was once one of Pitcher's residential neighborhoods. In fact, if you pull this area up on Street View, at least at the time of this video, you can still see the homes that used to stand here. Some were demolished as part of the federal buyout process, and most of the remainder were flattened by the 2008 tornado. Fast forward 15 years, and this, like most of this now unincorporated town, is just a grid of crumbling asphalt, serving close to nothing and going nowhere. But despite the complete loss of the town, coupled with the EPA's delayed and arguably inadequate response over the past 4 decades, not all hope is lost for this land.
Oh, really?
For nearly a century, the Quapaws had been all but locked out of controlling their own land, from mining activities all the way through to decades of fragmented cleanup efforts. But on October 1st, 2012, the EPA and the Quapaw tribe entered into a cooperative agreement that gave the Quapaws control over some of the remedial actions taken within the Tar Creek Superfund site. This was the first agreement of its kind between federal and tribal governments. Cleanup began ramping up through the 2010s, accelerated by a renewed focus on Tar Creek with the full involvement and cooperation of the Quapaw tribe. The vast majority of Pitcher's remaining structures were demolished by 2013, leaving behind a pockmarked landscape of chat piles, concrete foundations, and roads leading nowhere. On September 17, 2019, the EPA announced the release of the final strategic plan for the cleanup at Tar Creek. The plan was created in coordination with the state of Oklahoma and the Quapaw tribe. It highlights ongoing remediation efforts, like continuing to plug abandoned wells and diverting water to limit acid mine drainage, or continuing to monitor soil for toxic metals and performing yard remediation, or the decades-long effort to remove and clean up the most prominent features of the site, the chat piles themselves. This time around, with the Quapaw taking the lead, there can be some hope that the speed and quality of the cleanup efforts finally reflect a deeply rooted reverence for the land itself. But one question continues to weigh on nearby residents' minds. Will this cleanup be fast enough to prevent further contamination?
No.
While cleanup efforts have increased significantly in the past few years, so has the amount of rain. Climate change has brought on higher precipitation in the region, which results in higher amounts of toxic metal runoff from the chat piles and bases, as well as more acid mine water draining into Tar Creek. Additionally, flooding in Ottawa County has increased, but not just as a result of the increased rainfall. If the water were allowed to flow naturally, it would wind its way down to Neosho River and empty into Grand Lake with only minor flooding events. But Grand Lake residents, the most influential of which is Senator James Inhofe himself, who owns this vacation home on the lake, fought to keep control over Grand Lake's water levels by use of the Pensacola Dam in order to, quote, make the lake a better place for recreation and commerce. The use of the dam to control water levels directly for the purposes of fun and money significantly increases flooding events and risk further north in Ottawa County, especially in Miami. And flooding further contaminates the area with chat runoff and acid water, undoing decades' worth of yard remediation efforts and toxic metal containment. Inhofe's legislation was, to put it mildly, self-interested, and to put it bluntly, a direct reflection of his lifelong lack of human decency. Thankfully, in January 2023, James Inhofe finally resigned from Congress after 29 years of public service, 6 of which he spent as chairman of the committee that oversees the Environmental Protection Agency. And with some of his final pieces of legislation, Inhofe made it abundantly clear that it was only ever himself, not the public, that he intended to serve.
Bravo. Bravo. What a
So what's next for the Tar Creek Superfund site at large?
What a great politician.
Well, to be honest, it's a little hard to know what to believe. If we take at face value the final long-term strategic plan put out by the EPA in 2019, things would appear to be looking up. Chat pile removal and remediation has picked up significantly. Ottawa County continues to very closely monitor blood lead levels in children, and Quapaw Nation is finally able to help take the lead on some of these cleanup initiatives. But even the EPA, in their own strategic plan, admits that they don't know how long this will take, or how much it'll cost, using overly vague terms like decades and multi-millions of dollars in place of even the roughest estimates. As for Pitcher's immediate future, it will remain an ever-fading photographic negative of what it once was, as the empty concrete foundations and rotting debris continue to be swallowed up and reclaimed by nature. And if there's anything that we can learn from this as a country, hell, as a species, any sliver of experience we can use to prevent the brutal and remorseless exploitation of Earth's resources and the endless pursuit of personal wealth, well, for our children's sake, I sure hope we've learned it.
Did you hear on the last people that were living in the town when they had the tornado, there was a baby still there? They were still having babies there after all that. They were still having babies. That's fucked. That's fucked. That's fucked up.
When I was a kid, I noticed something interesting happening to the playgrounds in my neighborhood. To put it bluntly, they got lame. Seemingly overnight, all of the best playgrounds suddenly went from looking like this to looking like this. Interesting, unique wooden playgrounds were suddenly torn down and replaced with these boring, safe cookie-cutter layouts. When I decided to explore the disappearance of cool playgrounds online, I discovered that this was not a phenomenon unique to my neighborhood, but to the neighborhoods of kids in my generation all across North America. But if you're a little bit older than me, you might have also noticed something similar happening during your childhood. Except in your case, maybe the playground being torn down looked something like this, or even this. The reason cited for these changes was often safety. More durable materials, less hard surfaces, or things for kids to fall off of. But are these safer playgrounds really better for children? Or has our quest to protect kids caused us to lose something along the way? Today we're going to be taking a look at the history of playgrounds, learn why they were built in the first
they don't even
place,
go outside
explore
nowadays.
some
Now they just
terrifying
play,
early play
Roblox.
equipment, and see if a little pinch of danger might be exactly what we need to get kids outside again. During the Industrial Revolution, North America would see a huge wave of people moving into urbanized areas. But this sudden population growth would result in many of these new migrants ending up in slums, which, if you know anything about the Victorian era, were one of the last places in history you would ever want to be. The conditions in these slums were downright inhumane. They were dirty, overcrowded, and filled with crime,
No,
with
I
many
think
of
they
their
do school
residents living
online
far
too
below
now.
the poverty line. Children who were growing up in these places didn't have anywhere to play. In fact, some cities like New York actually had laws that banned kids from playing in the street altogether. But growing concerns about the increasing number of children living below the poverty line caused many people to fear that if they weren't given a proper place to play, then they would instead turn to a life of crime. The first person to come up with the idea for a public play space just for kids was Friedrich Froebel, an educator from Germany who created what he called the sand garden, or as we know it today, a sandbox. Froebel believed that providing kids with a stimulating environment where they could play with natural materials like sand was integral for their development, and that these sand gardens gave them the opportunity for exploration and learning. This idea would soon be adapted all throughout Germany, before it eventually made its way to North America and evolved into playgrounds, one of the first of which opened in 1887 in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. Playgrounds would become hugely popular among large cities, and their benefits were apparent. Not only did they keep kids out of the dangerous city streets, but they were seen as a place for building good moral citizens. Playgrounds were able to teach children teamwork, risk aversion, social skills, and they helped integrate the children of immigrants into American society. The idea was so successful that even New York, previously the no playing allowed city, mandated in 1895 that every future schoolhouse had to be built with a playground. This widespread adoption of playgrounds would eventually lead to the creation of the Playground Association of America, whose founding tenets included promoting safe environments in order to foster children's mental, physical, and moral well-being. And how did they plan to do that? Well, let's take a look at the playgrounds themselves.
Wow, climbing ropes. Imagine that in a playground today.
The biggest difference with early playgrounds is that they were not spaces for free play. While today a kid can just go to a public park and have fun, early playgrounds were treated more like a school gym class. Some sections were segregated by gender, and select locations also included additional facilities like bathrooms, community gardens, and swimming pools. Each playground would be equipped with an attendant, who would organize games for the kids that focused on exercise and teamwork. These attendants were integral for ensuring that playgrounds achieved their desired function of teaching kids to be good members of society. The first playgrounds included many of the structures that we're familiar with today, only less regulated and considerably more dangerous. Slides could be steep, and often only had low walls to prevent you from falling off,
that looks like an
if they
awesome
had
slide.
any walls at all. They were also metal, which made using one in the summer feel like you were descending directly into the burning depths of hell.
I love using a metal slide in the
Swings
summer.
were often set on a high frame, which meant that you could get some serious height if you were committed enough, so long as you didn't mind flying off or hitting your head on the nearby play structures. They also weren't confined to the traditional model, and featured all kinds of interesting variations. Then there were the jungle gyms, which first took their name very literally and were designed to just be an outdoor gymnasium. These structures were usually made of wood or metal, and were an impressive sight to behold, often acting as the centerpiece of their park. Here, kids could climb, hang, or swing to their heart's content, just as long as they didn't mind falling 20 feet to the hard ground below. Some of them also included these things, called sliding poles, which were basically a slide without the slide part, and you would just go down with your legs wrapped around the outside. Some of them were also made of wood, so you can only imagine the level of splinters that you were risking. Honestly, I'm not sure if that's better or worse than the metal slide. Another staple of early playgrounds were spinners and merry-go-rounds. Unlike their modern variants, these contraptions had no safety features to limit their speed, meaning that not only did they go fast, but they could launch you clear across the playground if you weren't holding on tight enough, not to mention the extra casualties if you hit other children. But the most notorious piece of playground equipment by far was the giant stride. This was a type of spinner that was built with a singular pole that was topped with a big wheel with ropes hanging off of it.
Whoa,
Kids would hold onto these ropes and then run around the pole as the wheel spun, eventually causing themselves to be lifted into the air by the centrifugal force. Now, I'm not gonna lie, these look super fun, but they were also really dangerous. Children losing their grip and flying off was a common occurrence, and some versions had metal handles, which could then whip around and hit the other children riding. And of course, if another kid isn't paying attention and walks too close to the structure when it's in motion, then they could end up getting kicked in the face. And all of these problems were even worse with the more do-it-yourself varieties that some playgrounds used, which could be built as tall as you wanted. These dangers would cause the giant stride to be one of the first pieces of playground equipment removed for safety reasons. But while other structures like the merry-go-round would receive modifications in order to hang around a little longer, as concerns about child safety began to rise, their days were also numbered. The onset of World War II would signal the end for many of the original playgrounds. With resources needed for the war effort, many metal play structures would be scrapped, playground attendants were slowly phased out, and the lack of manpower to maintain public parks eventually led to many of these early playgrounds deteriorating. As for their European counterparts, most would be destroyed by bombings during the war. But from the ashes would soon rise a new type of playground, one that would be quite literally built on the remains of old. With nowhere else to go, kids started playing in the ruins of bomb sites, climbing and exploring the remains of their destroyed cities. This idea would eventually be adapted into the adventure playground, a type of playground that emphasized allowing children to manipulate their environment. These playgrounds used natural materials, scraps, and junk, and were designed to have as many free-moving pieces as possible. Some major aspects of adventure playgrounds could include tires, tree trunks, building materials and tools, and a variety of found objects.
I've never seen one of those.
More traditional playgrounds would also change during this time. In the 50s and 60s, there would be a rise in the popularity of novelty playgrounds, ones that had their play structures modeled after a specific theme. These playgrounds still included many of the original staples, but the theming provided an extra level of excitement and visual intrigue. Thanks to improvements in manufacturing, standardized playground equipment would also be available, which allowed for more elaborate designs than earlier pieces that had to be built from a kit IKEA style. But while playgrounds were getting more interesting, there were also rising concerns about safety. Accidents had always happened, but in the early days, the presence of supervisors made parents feel more confident that their kids were in a safe place. Although some dangerous elements of playgrounds were phased out, changing social attitudes and several lawsuits in the 1970s would eventually lead to the standardization of playgrounds in North America, and a big change in the industry going forward. The 1980s would see the removal of many play elements that were deemed hazardous, like hard surfaces, tall climbing structures, and many classic pieces of play equipment. New playgrounds were now being built with safety as a priority, rounded edges, softer materials, and smaller overall playgrounds, with plenty of bars to keep kids from hanging off the structures or from falling. As for the old playgrounds, many would meet their demise during this time, either for safety reasons or simply because communities were looking to modernize their public parks. But this change in priority didn't mean that there weren't still interesting playgrounds being made. It was during this new safety era in the 80s and 90s that many of the beloved wooden playgrounds would be built, including the ones designed by Leathers and Associates, which some of you might recognize by their really cool castle playgrounds, like the one in Toronto's High Park, which was my childhood favorite. But unfortunately, as child safety initiatives became more extreme in the early 2000s, even these wooden playgrounds were considered too old and dangerous. Parents made the argument that they kept children too hidden from view, and there was a risk for splinters or insects making their homes inside the structure.
No, not splinters!
Once again, this push for safety would see the removal of many playgrounds from the 80s and 90s, and their replacements becoming even more sterile and boring. But the rise of ultra-safe playgrounds came with a whole set of new problems. Their design philosophy often focused around ensuring that even the youngest child potentially using the structure would be safe. This meant even shorter heights, even more guardrails, and even less moving elements. But while these new measures supposedly reduced the risk of injury in young children, at the same time it ended up isolating the older ones. But come here, come here. Let me tell you something. The children, they yearn for dangerous playgrounds.
Yeah,
a merry-go-round might be able to launch you 6 feet across the pavement, but they're fun. I remember when I was around 8 years old, my family went on a vacation to the Dominican Republic, and the resort there had this really old park with a merry-go-round. Now, I had never encountered one in real life before, and I spent every second that I could spinning on that thing. And you know what? No one got hurt, and I'm guessing that in most of your childhoods, no one got seriously hurt either. In fact, more recent studies have actually shown that North American playgrounds might be too safe. Children have a natural inclination towards risky play. Risk-taking activities like climbing a really tall jungle gym can help brain development and improve self-confidence and risk management skills later in life. Some critics have even suggested that these overly safe playgrounds actually cause kids to be more fearful of things like heights, and lead to increased anxiety levels. According to Dr. Sandsetter at the Norwegian University for Science and Technology, engaging in risky play mirrors some cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that are used to treat anxiety. And on top of all that, there isn't any clear evidence that these safer playgrounds actually reduce the number of injuries. Little kids are always going to find some way to hurt themselves, whether that's falling off a slide or just eating wood chips. But all hope is not lost. In recent years, there have been several groups that have sought to improve playground quality in North America. Companies like Compan, for example, are building innovative playgrounds that focus on giving kids the physical and mental development that they need. And they even brought back the spinny things! And the sliding poles! And they're not alone. There are plenty of other amazing people out there that are trying to create both a safe and exciting environment for kids. Like this playground at the Scenic Caves in Blue Mountain, Ontario, which has an old-timey jungle gym. It also has this wooden statue of Shrek, which I totally thought I imagined as a kid, but it's real, and it's important to me that you know that. There's even a few adventure playgrounds left, like the one in Berkeley, California. As less and less children are playing outside, we need good playgrounds more than ever. But thankfully, things are back on the right track, and future generations have a lot to look forward to. And there you have it, that's the history of playgrounds. Honestly, when I started this topic, I wasn't expecting it to be so in-depth, but I found it really interesting. Hopefully you did too. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, you can also subscribe to my channel, and keep up to date on all the fun history videos of the future. But for now, I bid you farewell. Early amusement parks were terrifying, and I want to visit them so badly. Now I know I could just hop in a car and drive to my nearest Six Flags. But folks, I live in Canada. We only have like 3 major amusement parks in the entire country.
Stop, stupid autoplay. Stop. I don't know if I like the hair. Maybe I just didn't do it right.
10 lists are including a hotel water park.
Stop. No, get away. Go away. That's okay. I'll find an artist that knows what they're doing and make it look good. Yeah, it looks fine. Maybe I should do like stripes in my hair instead of the gradient. I don't know. I didn't even get to work on my magical girl outfit. I don't have it in me tonight. Yeah, I kind of want it as a gradient. I wish there was a magical girl asset that I could use. I didn't find any that I really liked. Maybe I'll try finding one again. Oh, I definitely want a wand. I definitely want a wand. Yeah, it's gonna be like my icon. Like my icon on Discord is my wand. Do I still have that somewhere? No. I like this. Well, that's just what I made, though. Lots of sparkles. Yeah, lots of sparkles. Maybe I'll just find an anime, a magical girl anime that has an outfit that's similar to what I want. That could work. That could work. I think that would be enough. If I gave them... I'm trying to think what I could give an artist so that they can design an outfit. You know, if I just describe it with words, I think it would be more difficult for me. I want to give them as much information as I can. Yeah, I could. Is this Princess Peach? I think Precure definitely has better design, so. This one's actually close. But I want a heart in my center. What do you call the center of your chest? Whatever that thing is called. A brooch? Why did it suddenly go to dark mode? Should I also have a big bow on my chest? Which pre-core is this? I like these. I like this pink one the best, I think. Actually, they're all the same, aren't they? Oh no, they're slightly different. Different colors. Mostly. But they are slightly different too. Oh, I like the asymmetrical skirt too. Oh, look! Hair gradients! Hair gradients! Hair gradients! I like hair gradients! I like them! Okay, I won't be on too much longer. I'm kind of sleepy today. I like this character a lot. It said they were Aqua. I don't know that one. I only know like 3 or 4 Precures. Yeah, this is very close to what I was thinking of. Where the bow kind of looks like a butterfly, which I would just it'd just be a bow for me. And there'll be a heart in the middle. Yeah, I would want it to be pink and well, pink and blue like my hair. Or maybe just pink, I don't know. This would at least be one good reference, though. That's Sakura. That's Madoka. It's alright. Ooh, look at this. Black and purple. I do need art of me doing the finger hearts. It's a good song. It's your beat? What the heck? I can't see the image close up. Fuck. She's pretty cool. I like the arm puffs, the puffy shoulders. I definitely want the puffy shoulders. I don't know what they're called. Is this Madoka? Does Madoka also have an outfit with the puffy shoulders? No. It's perfect! It's perfect! We just gotta find the artist. We found the one, chat. Is it AI? Is it AI? You can never be sure. You can never be too sure. Why is she, what is this? What is this? I think it's AI. I don't know what this is. I'm gonna say it's AI. What is this? Who made this and who's buying it? Who's buying this? This is like a graphic design thing. Use this for graphic design. Yeah, okay. Well, this actually makes more sense than whatever that magical girl. Who was gonna buy that magical girl? Unless it's AI. Yeah, well, I'm too tired tonight. I'm gonna end the stream. But, we'll definitely be back on Friday for the rest of Castlevania on the NES. I have the codes, so hopefully we don't have as many technical issues, but if we do, I have the codes. I have the Game Genie codes, so we can start on the level that we froze at. Next time we freeze up. I feel like it's gonna freeze again. I feel it. You're excited for Castlevania? Yay! I'm excited for it too. It's good. Hopefully we can beat it. We're pretty close to the end. We only have a couple more stages and a couple more levels and one more stage, I think. But it's pretty tough. It's a pretty tough game. Alright, thanks for everybody who came. Thanks for lurkers and bot watchers. And don't forget I love you. Mwah. Have a good night. Matane.